So my advice is aim for a great user experience that's designed for humans.
Welcome to Velocitize Talks. I'm Eric Jones. I'm here with Julio Taylor, the CEO of Hallam. Julio, it's great to have you.
Thank you, Eric. It's a pleasure to be here, and thanks for having me.
Julio, you were the creative director at Hallam and you've become the CEO. Tell us a little bit about that transition.
On a personal level, it's been interesting because it was a change that coincided with the onset of the pandemic. So it in a way, it was very daunting and very scary for me to step into such a big responsibility at such a difficult time. But at the same time, it was great because it brought a sense of urgency, acceleration, a sense of new energy to do new things, which at the time is really what we needed to do.
What was the skill or talent that you used often while creative director that you found yourself using quite often as CEO?
I've always taken pride in being a big picture thinker, be able to step back and look at the implications and the interconnections of things, and being a creative person. I've always been interested in what's next and asking, is there a better way of doing this? Is there another way we could be thinking about this? Is there a different approach that we haven't thought about? And kind of being a little bit more infinite in my thinking, a bit more expansive in my approach has definitely helped me to conceptualize some of the challenges that we've got as an agency and the very present need to evolve and to change.
Tell me a little bit about how you think the very word brand may have been affected by the pandemic.
In a way, I think the pandemic has forced marketers to look at the world the way we used to look at it before the internet existed, where brand was a vehicle for emotion primarily. And actually, the most powerful form of remarketing or the most powerful form of brand awareness was people's memory. It was the human affinity to a brand. So I think the term brand has, in a way, come full circle back to its true original intention, which is to invoke an emotion, to be something that means something to the buyer, right? Rather than simply be a collection of messages or a collection of assets that get used.
I wonder if you could do maybe a double click on how you're doing that for your clients from a digital perspective, creating these more emotional, evocative experiences online.
So when we talk about the attention economy, we refer to the fact that there is so much content and so much information out there available at your fingertips that the ability to simply hold the human attention span for long enough for them to understand what you've got to say is the precious resource that we're actually fighting for, whether it's a website or a campaign or an ad, right? So if we think about the concept that the economy relies on the limitations of the human attention span and the truth that there is more content, that there are people on earth to consume the content that's created, therefore that precious resource is a huge frontline for marketers. So what we try to do and what we talk about a lot in simplifying the complexity is in bringing things together into cohesive campaigns, making sure that brand is at the forefront of technology and advertising, that a website's user experience is more important, in fact, than its design, for example, or its maybe even its technical complexity. Sometimes vastly simplifying an experience is more important than giving a user more options.
I wondered if you could talk about maybe some of the shortcomings of today's e-commerce experience and how you think everything will play out in the future.
One of the reasons why shops have always been, a mainstay of the economy is because there's an experiential component to them. So you go to a store, you can try something, you can touch something, you can see it in 3D, certainly for physical products. And I think there's an experiential element from the music to the decor to the welcome that you get when you enter a store that's part of the brand experience. I think when you remove those physical experiential components of a purchasing process, you kind of homogenize it to an extent where it doesn't really mean anything. So, for example, buying a $50,000 product from a premium store and buying a $5 product from a discount store online are broadly the same experience, or should be, or often are. So what are you adding to the method of buying that you used to do before in a store? I think that's a real shortcoming of the modern experience. And I think that's why what we mentioned before about the attention economy and the importance of UX, that's why this is so important, because if you're able to create new trends and create new experiences online that go some way towards replacing the things that we've lost from the physical experience, I think that's a great big win.
What advice do you have for brands as they think about improving their experience, as they think about improving their speed?
My view on this is that Google's master plan is always to create a good experience. And actually everything that they do that sounds complicated, or it sounds like there's a lot to think about, if you actually think about it, all they want you to do is to have a better website. They want you to write, years ago, they wanted us to write better content with less spammy content. They wanted us to have faster websites. Now they want us to have sites that load properly, that don't have stuff jumping around. Or all we're doing here is we're inching towards a human first organic experience that's actually worth reading. That's all they want. So my advice is, do you enjoy reading your own website? Do you find your content engaging? Does it annoy you when you load it? Is it slow? Aim for that. Aim for a website that you really think is great. And I still often see these sites. I go on them and stuff is jumping around. And I'm thinking of like CNN is a good example. You go on it and it's just everywhere. Stuff is loading everywhere. And you think this is going to be a nightmare for them when this stuff begins to kick in properly. So my advice is aim for a great user experience that's designed for humans.
Tell us a little bit about how you think, you talked about some technical elements and architectures, how Headless may play in all of this.
I think Headless is a huge part of this. One because of the speed implications and how clean the front end can be, and how clean the experience can be without being burdened by either by legacy code or changes in CMS that, how many times have you would have heard this a million times, where clients don't want to change a website because they're petrified of the technical debt. They're petrified of opening that box that's going to unleash some historical demon that they'd never dared to open before, right? So Headless is going to be able to decouple that technical thing from the experience. So we're able to then focus on creating something beautiful that also has a separate back end. So I think Headless is going to be a really elegant solution, but that comes with its own challenges. And I know that you guys at WP Engine have done a lot of amazing work with Atlas and stuff like this about, Headless stack and making sure that Headless can't be some, panacea that we all kind of think is the answer. You still have to build that with the right foundations, with the right thinking, the right technical architectures deep down. So I think Headless is only ever going to be as good as your stack and your design and all of these things. And it goes back to the point you raised before about complexity. This is what we mean. So the further you go down this road of trying to create great experiences, the more complex everything below the surface becomes, to the point where you end up with this product, this iceberg, and beneath the water there is this unbelievable mass of stuff happening that the customer never sees. So what we're kind of doing is we're pushing the burden behind the scenes and making the experience leaner and simpler and more beautiful. And I think that's a good thing for consumers, but it's a very difficult thing for marketers and brands and developers to get right. But that's the reason why we need to continue to push forward and continue to be open-minded about these things.
What's the best piece of professional advice that you've ever been given?
I think one of the most important things is that you are responsible for everything that happens around you. So the success of others and the success of people above you and beneath you in the hierarchy are your responsibility. And that if you're the only thing that matters is the overall outcome, the overall success of what you're trying to do. And that's particularly important when you think about modern marketing and all of these incredible complexities that we're talking about. Is the success of the developers and the designers and the SEO people and the content writers. All of that is your responsibility. If you're part of that machine, you have to contribute to everything that's around you, not just your own little, your own instruments or your own piece. If you're in an orchestra or in a band and a couple of guys are out of time, you either tell them or you adjust your own timing to make sure the song is right. You don't just keep playing your own thing.
So Julio, one of the questions we love asking our guests is a book that you'd like to recommend to our viewers.
So there are two books that I am currently reading. I'm juggling between the two. One of them is called Atomic Habits by James Clear, which talks about the small but very powerful incremental improvements that you can make to mindset and habit for huge success and huge gain and huge permanent improvement over time. I think it's a really great personal development book that I've really enjoyed reading. And the other one is actually a classic of design and brand and strategy called Start With Why by Simon Sinek, which for my sins is something I should have read 5 years ago, being in the creative backed industry, but I just never did. And it's a really powerful journey into psychology and the scientific thinking behind why brands matter, why brands grow, why brands affect users at a deeply subconscious level rather than simply a logical, processed sort of space.
That was Julio Taylor, the CEO of Hallam.
Thanks very much.